Yes, sir. Nearly 15 students have joined, sir.
So we should start or we should wait for some more time because some more expected to join. So is the full strength or some more expected to join?
Sir, we shall start, sir, because it's time 3:35 now. We can start. So students are coming, sir. Let me admit.
Yeah, just maybe a couple of minutes, 1 or 2 minutes, maybe people are joining gradually.
Sure, sir. Sure, sure.
So is it feasible for you to record the whole session and
Yeah, sir. I will
available in
record.
you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Record is in progress.
Please record the whole session. At the end of the session, please make it available in YouTube or something.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Let's start or
Yes,
just
sir.
wait for a couple of minutes. 2 minutes. I think people are joining gradually.
Yes, sir. Let me give a brief intro, sir. First of all, so good evening, students. So it's our pleasure to have Dr. Sofar Kumar Jana from Verpol India Private Limited. He is working as a senior CAE analyst. So he will be delivering the CFD basics and its governing equations through this guest lecture. I hope you will be all benefited by this guest lecture. So I request our guest to handle the session, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. So welcome to this session. So before learning CFD, you should acquainted with what are the governing equation you are going to use in CFD or in general in transport phenomena and the fluid mechanics. Especially this session and subsequently are planned for another 1 or 2 or 3 sessions that is dedicated to the general formulation of the governing equation that is used in the CFD, right? So now let me share the screen. Is my screen visible right now?
Yes, sir. Your screen started visible to us.
Presentation.
Yes, sir. We can see, sir.
Now it's a full, right?
Yes, sir. Governing equations in transport phenomena. We are able to see.
Okay. Let's welcome everybody to this session on governing equation in transport phenomena. So let's understand what is transport phenomena. Okay. So first, let's understand what is the definition of a fluid, right? If you go and compare, so in the still even in the 21st century, science has reached to a level where we can find out these short particles like fermion, meson, and all those things. But all sort of practical purposes, the molecule is our basic entity based on which we are doing any analysis, right? For macroscopic approach, right? Any day-to-day solid mechanics, fluid mechanics, anything, the basic element is the molecule, right? So what is the basic definition of a fluid? If you look at the structure, there may be a definition, anything can be flow, anything initial state, fluid state and all. But from a mechanical engineering definition of a fluid is that it can define as a substance which continuously differ under the application of a infinitely small shear stress. Doesn't matter what is the magnitude of the shear stress. Once the shear stress is applied on the fluid element, it is continuously flow, right? Fluid is further classified into as a liquid, as a gas, right? So in that aspect, it is and one more thing, that fluid cannot regain to its original position once the deforming force is removed. What is then the difference between the solid and the liquid fluid? Once you applied the fluid, force on the solid, after the force is removed, the solid will regain to its partial or original position, while the fluid is a zero memory substance. Irrespective of any time interval you replace the force, the fluid will not regain to its original position, except a particular class of fluid which is known as viscoelastic fluid, which is a special class of fluid. But in general, this is the definition of the fluid, that It is a substance which flows continuously under the application of the shear stress, right, of any small magnitude, and once the stress is or the force is removed, it cannot regain to its original position. That is the mechanical definition of a fluid. So let's assume some continuum approximation as it will in a microscopic phenomena. We'll go for the continuum approximation. So even if there is a concept provided by the Danish scientist Martin Knudsen, that is the continuum. What is continuum? The mean free path. Let's first define what is the mean free path in fluid. Mean free path is nothing but the approximate distance that is traveled by two molecules, by a molecule between two successive collisions. That is the mean free path of a fluid, right? L is the characteristics length. Characteristics length is the length of any container, any geometry in which we are doing the fluid flow analysis. So based on the thing, Knudsen provided a dimensional number, non-dimensional number, that is known as Knudsen number. This Knudsen number is the ratio of mean free path to characteristics length. So again, if this Knudsen number is follows more than less than 0.01, the flow is continuum flow. Means once you are taking the domain and analyzing the flow, you assume that molecules are presented everywhere in the domain. So such kind of things is known as continuum flow. If Knudsen number varies in the range 0.01 to 0.1, this kind of flow is known as slip flow. 0.1 to 10, this kind of flow is known as transition flow, and more than 10, it is known as free molecular flow. So for all our analysis, currently we'll fix our thing on the continuum approximation or the continuum flow. Now it is clear what is continuum, right? For a air under standard atmospheric pressure of 1013 millibar and room temperature, the mean free path is around 68 nanometer, right? If you consider the size of the container, size of the room, or size of the geometry in which we are doing flow analysis, maybe it's a pump, maybe air conditioner, maybe it's a turbine, anywhere we do the flow analysis, they are in terms of few meters to few millimeters to few centimeters, this range, right? But this mean free path in the order of nanometer, right? That's why most of the thing they fall less than, the ratio is fall less than 0.01, and the flow is by default continuum, right? So let's understand the system versus the control volume, right? The system, what is the system? A system is a collection of matter having a fixed identity, right? Means it's an identical molecule, their thing. Just like identical molecule, they form a particular kind of fluid, let's say it's a water. Some identical molecules, they form another kind of fluid, let's say air, right? So this is a all identical collection of molecules, this is known as system, right? A control volume, right? A control volume is nothing but a volume in the space. The arbitrary volume is taken in the space to analyze the fluid flow. This arbitrary volume is known as control volume, right? These control volumes are now what? The control volumes are enclosed by some surface, because in the space you have considered a volume. To generate a volume, you need to a closed surface across the volume to find a closed control volume, and this surface which close the control volume, they are known as control surface, right? Then there are how many kind of control volume? One is fixed control volume. Your fluid is moving, your domain is moving. You don't want your to go along the domain in the particular point in the domain. You fix your control volume. This is known as fixed control volume. In the flow domain, the domain is moving, and you are also moving your control domain across the flow. You are moving your control volume across the flow field. This kind of control volume is known as moving control volume, and there is some deforming control volume. Means the volume is still changing its shape with respect to time. This is known as deforming control volume, right? So now come to the primitive theorem of the transport phenomena, that is known as Reynolds transport theorem. So it is the phenomena is telling phi is any extensive conservative transport property, right? So let's understand what are the transport property. When the fluid is flowing, so its mass is passing, right? It is one of the property of the fluid is mass, right? Another property of the fluid which is conserved is the momentum. The third property of the fluid which is conserved is the energy. The fourth property may be species transportation, just like you have a fluid which is composed of a mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, and multiple species are there, right? any sort of time, any point in the flow path, the sum of all those things are going to be conserved. This is a species conservation, right? Then let capital phi be any extensive conservative transport property, right? And small pi is the intensive property associated with the phi. Intensive property means the extensive property for unit mass, right? So intensive property is something of the fluid which is independent of the mass, where m represent the total mass associated with the system. Now let's consider two steps over here. The brown color one showing the state one, right? At time is equal to t, the brown state one of the fluid. It has contents of molecular known. So as the time evolves, the control volume they deform from this state one to this state two, this blue color of boundary, right? There is some intersection region between time t and time t plus delta t, right? So let's find what is the intensity total extensive control property at time t. Phi at time t equals to this region 1, right? This region 1 is nothing but my this region, right? Plus phi as region 3 plus this 3 region, okay? So means this is means at time t the total extensive property is this much, right? I divide into two parts. One is exclusively this region and other is the intersection region. Similarly, at phi equal to time t plus del t, right? We have two regions. One is exclusively this region and one is the intersection region time t plus delta t, right? Now, let me calculate the rate of change with respect to time of the system, okay? Just like ordinary differential, we can do d phi by dt of the system equal to how much? Limit delta t tends to 0, phi t plus delta t minus phi t by delta t, right? This is my net rate of change of the system, right? Limit delta t tends to 0. What is phi t plus delta t? It is phi to t subscript t plus delta t plus 3t plus delta t, this region, right? Minus this region, right? Divided by delta t. So if you rearrange this term, okay, phi 3t plus delta t minus phi 3t plus delta t by delta t plus this region at t plus delta t minus this region at point t, represent the first term, and the second term represent this region at t plus delta t minus this region at t, right? This is the after arrangement. So in general, what happens? The control volume, this is a Esgaret manner. I represent the deformation of the control volume. For a small time interval, the control volume do not deform so much, right? So it deforms very small quantity. As delta t tends to 0, the control volume deformation is very less, right? The system, then the delta t tends to 0, the system can approach the control volume, right? So this phi del phi 3 plus delta t minus the intersection area, the change with respect to time, we can represent it represent in terms of how much d phi by dt. This is again, this is the partial differential equation, this is the ordinary differential equation. This represents the net change in the system, this represents the net change in the control volume, right? Imagine the control volume is not deforming so much. There is a small change in boundary from this is the original shape of the intersection area. There is a small change of boundary this side, there is a small change of boundary this side, right? Then what this system represent, this term is representing, net change with respect to time inside the control volume, plus this term representing what? Something changing within the surface, right? This is what? This is something phi out minus something phi in. Some property they are going out of the control volume. Suppose this is the my system when delta t is 0, this also a control volume. Something is in over here, something is out over here. That term is represented by this term. So in a triple integral form, okay, this is how much the control volume. This is d phi by dt. If I integrate the net property, this is the intensive property. Till now it is the extensive property. I can represent the extensive property as the integral of the intensive property over the volume. Suppose the dv, this v represent my volume, is a small volume associated, then rho small phi into dv. If I do the triple integral over the volume, then this will give me the volume integral, that the net rate of change of volume plus the net rate of change of property. I can represent by this way, rho phi vr means the relative velocity at which the control volume is changing, into n cap, the direction normal to the surface, into ds. ds means I have to do the surface integral over the entire surface, that is control volume is changing, right? So this Vr is nothing but the flow velocity V minus the control volume velocity Cv, right? Now, right now here we define the control volume may be moving. Somewhere the control volume is fixed, somewhere the control volume is moving, right? Once the control volume is moving, the Vr represents the control volume velocity minus the flow velocity. That is the relative velocity, right? So in the term, what is represent the rate of change of extensive property of a system equal to how much? The rate of change of intensive property inside the control volume, that is represented by this volume integral term over here, rate of change of the volume integral plus net flux of the intensive property across the control surface. So this RTT or Reynolds transport equation, this is generic in nature. In any extensive transport property like mass, energy, species, as already discussed. So based on this theorem, right, we'll derive all this governing equation, continuity equation, Navier-Stokes equation, energy equation, and so on, right? So let's come to the next slide. Okay, RTT for a stationary and non-deformable control volume. So now come to the stationary control volume, means we are assuming that control volume is fixed in the space, it is no more changing its coordinate with respect to time, right? In the measurement coordinate with respect to time. And again, it's not deforming, means its boundary is fixed, its boundary is not changing with respect to time. For such kind of control volume, the relative velocity equals to V, the velocity of the fluid, because the control volume velocity is 0, right? The relative velocity is equal to how much? For a stationary volume is velocity of the fluid, and the volume is not a function of time, that is the non-deformable, right? So in that case, what will do? d phi by dt system equal to triple integral. If V is not a function of the time, I can bring the time integral inside the time derivative inside the integral, because here V may be a function of time. In that time, I need a Newton-Leibniz theorem. But as long as V is not my function of time, so del V is a I can bring the partial differential inside this integral sign. That's what I did over here, right? So as usual, the remaining term is over the control surface rho phi. This will be Vr will be V, that is the flow volume, dot n cap means the normal to the surface, into ds, again the along the control surface we have to do the integration, right? So again, now the question is that, okay, this control surface we have to convert it into a what? We have to convert it into this surface integral to a volume integral, right? So this is to do that, we have to use the Gauss divergence theorem. What Gauss divergence theorem is telling? Okay, the Gauss divergence theorem is telling the volume integral of divergence of any field variable zeta. Okay, if you are taking the volume integral, this is equals to the surface integral of the dot product of the variable times the surface normal and integrated along the control surface, right? If you use Gauss divergence theorem over here, and then this term can be represented as the how much? The thing will be the net term divergence of the rho phi in terms of the Vr. It will be V because it's a stationary control volume, and this will be the surface integral will be approximately replaced by what? Volume integral, right? Up to here, it is the Reynolds transport theorem for a stationary non-deformable control volume. Then we will use the Gauss divergence theorem to convert it to the surface integral to the volume integral. Hope things are clear right now. Maybe it's confusing for a non-mathematical background thing, which are not much acquainted with the rigorous mathematics, but this is not very difficult. This is elementary engineering mathematics of semester 2 or semester 3, right? So then we can in the whole things we can bring under the say a single control volume integral over triple integral, right? Everything becomes partial derivative, and this is the divergence of rho phi v into dv, right? This is my final version of the Reynolds transport theorem. Any doubt over here?
Sir, okay, we can interact at the last of the session, sir, because
okay.
Yeah, so it will be
proceed. Okay,
yes.
Now we understand this is my Reynolds transport theorem. Okay, now based on from the Reynolds transport theorem, let's derive the conservation equation of the mass or the mass continuity equation. Let phi be the total mass of the system. I have considered a system. Okay, this is my system. If phi, I represent this any extensive control volume, I will consider phi as my extensive control volume is equal to mass of the system. Then what is my intensive control volume? Phi. Mass by mass equal to 1, right? So here, if I consider phi equal to total mass of the system, then my intensive property will be 1, right? Then again apply the Reynolds transport theorem. The net change of extensive property of the system equal to how much? CV. Here in terms of the phi becomes 1, del rho by del t plus divergence of rho into V into here phi equals to again 1 into dV is the volume integral of the whole things, right? So net, what is the fundamental principle of conservation of the mass? The net mass of the system is conserved, means there is no change in the mass of the system. This is a fundamental principle. Mass is balanced always. So over the time, del phi by del t of the system equal how much then? This is should be simply equals to 0, right? Then equate this term with 0, right hand side of this term. So once you equating these things, you will get the integral form of the mass conservation equation. This represents the integral form of the mass conservation equation. Del rho by del t plus divergence of rho v. Okay, the volume integral one should take. This is the integral form of the mass conservation equation. As the choice of the control volume is arbitrary, hence the integral must be 0. Means if the control volume, what is the shape you are taking, they are arbitrary. You may be take this shape, someone may be take this other shape, any other arbitrary shape of the control volume you could take, and this and the it allows any shape to be taken arbitrarily. So the integral must be 0, right? So then once you do that, then this is the differential form of the mass conservation equation. Del rho by del t plus divergence of the rho v equals to 0. For incompressible flow, what happened? For incompressible flow, the density is not a strong function of the pressure, right? So this term will goes away, del rho by del t terms. This is become 0, okay? And then the divergence of the velocity equals to 0. This is for incompressible flow, the differential form of the conservation of mass, right? So then similarly come the equation for the conservation of the linear momentum, right? Let phi equals to my mv, the linear momentum, right? Mass time velocity, clear? Phi equals to my linear momentum. Then small phi, the intensive property is how much? The extensive property I divided by m, because this becomes the velocity. Now my intensive property equal to velocity. Now let's go and put the same thing over the Reynolds transport theorem. Instead of the phi, you put the velocity, right? And take this integral, right? So now del phi by del t of the system equal to how much? Rho, in terms of phi, I put the capital T, that is the velocity of the system. Del rho v by del t plus divergence of the rho into v. Then whole I have taken the volume integral of the same thing. So what is the Newton's second law of motion? What is Newton's second law of motion is telling? This telling d phi by dt of the system is, this is telling net rate of change of linear momentum, right? This is rate of change of linear momentum of the system, right? What is Newton's second law of motion is telling? States that the rate of change of linear momentum of the system equals to net unbalanced force acting on the system, right? That is the Newton's second law. The net rate of change of linear momentum equal to net unbalanced force acting on a system. So this is what I determine from the Reynolds transport theorem. This is equals to my net unbalanced force acting on the system, right? That I did the same thing, okay? So this unbalanced force equal to how much? This is the volume integral, right, of this term, plus then I expanded this term with using the identity. Divergence of f and g. F and g are my two entities. Divergence of f and g equals to f divergence of g plus g dot product of gradient of f. If I use the same thing, now this term equal to how much? Now this term equal to rho del rho v by del t. Okay, this just I use the chain rule, right? Rho del v by del t plus v del rho by del t, right? Then this use the vector calculus, rules of the identity of the vector calculus, divergence of fg equals to split by this rule. Okay, then this becomes expanded form. Then I rearrange the things, right? Once I rearrange the things, the right hand side term represent what? That they represent nothing but my mass continuity equation, right? So which is equals to 0. So this right side term, simply they are going to 0 because they represent the mass continuity, and every fluid the mass is going to be conserved. So what we'll get, the net unbalanced force acting on the system equals to rho del v by del t plus b del the divergence b into dot product of the gradient of b, right, into the volume integral. So now let's come understand. Okay, before understanding the net unbalanced force, let's understand a little bit about the fluid kinematics. Okay, so let me go to the paint brush. Okay, how the fluid deform in the system, right? Okay, so I don't have any optical keyboard or something to show, but here in the paint brush I'll show it, right? So yeah, I'll take some brush. Okay, this is my first initial fluid. Okay, domain. This is same for 4 cases. This is my state 1, right? This is my state 2, when the fluid deform with respect to time. This is also my state 2, right? State 2, state 2. Yes. There are 4 cases. In which this is the fluid state 1. Okay, they are deforming into a state 2, right? Just imagine 2. This is a vector. They are joining position of 2 molecules in the fluid in the state 1. Okay, some fraction of the fluid, they can change from state 1 to state 2, okay, without changing the relative position of the fluid element, means without any deformation. The relative position means the angle between the fluid element, they remain unchanged without any deformation, right? Some fluid element from state 1 to state 2, they do not change the angle, okay, but change the magnitude. The length between them goes on, the distance between them goes on increasing, but they do not do any angular deformation, right? Some fluid element, they do what? They change both magnitude and direction. Sorry, this is a straight line. Okay, so this is something deformed. You can change the original position and the final position. The angle between them change, the magnitude between them change, right? This is called deformation. And some fluid element, they don't just change the 180-degree angle. They don't change the any magnitude or any other direction. They just rotate in the thing. So this is what called on deform. This is on deform. Okay. This when the no angle between 2 adjacent fluid molecules that changing by deformation of the fluid, they are called on deformed fluid. Okay, transportation of the fluid with on deform. So when the magnitude is changing, the direction is not changing. This is the linear deformation. Okay, there is not a change in the magnitude, only change in the, sorry, there is no change in the, only change in the magnitude, no change in the direction. This is something called angular deformation. Okay, where in the fluid both magnitude and both angle between them is changing, right? This is something called rotation, right? Where exactly the magnitude remains same and the fluid is rotating 180 degrees, just like a rigid body. It is a rotating, right? So now, if I come to this sequence, so this represents the concept of forcing on a stress tensor, right? So let's go a little bit. Oh, let me auto slides here. Okay, so here represents the simply represents, this is the first stage and this is the second stage, and this is something represents the linear deformation. This is the angular deformation, right? Already I explained what is the deformation. Now let's come how the deformation is mapping. Normally, force, again the displacement is again a vector, right? The force is again a vector. The mapping of the surface in which the force is acting, the response of the surface, okay, the together they form a tensor. Okay, this is called Cauchy stress tensor. Means in a simplified word, I'll understand. Okay, so this force is, some force is acting on along this surface, right? So now once it is acting, it is deforming. So in order to represent net action, I need to represent two things, right? What is the direction and what is the magnitude of the force, right? That is the first thing. And second, what is the area orientation of the surface? What is the surface normal direction? Suppose in this surface, some force is acting this manner, that will produce a different result. Some force is acting this manner, that will produce a different result. Some force is acting along this manner, that will produce a different result. So altogether, the interaction between the surface area, surface normal vector and the force vector, altogether they form a stress tensor. That is the second order stress tensor, that is known as Cauchy stress tensor. Okay, so that represented over here, tau xx, the first subscript represent the direction of the surface normal, the second subscript represent the direction of the forcing, right? The tau xx is sigma, sorry, the sigma xx here represent how much? Sigma xx represent the forcing along the surface normal direction x, and because of the force in the x direction. Sigma xy, they represent forcing in the surface normal, that is x direction. This is the surface where surface normal is x direction, and the force direction is along the y axis. Similarly, sigma xz, that represents the force acting on a surface whose surface normal direction is x, and that the force acting along the z direction. Simply for any other surface I can do it, right? So then this thing, okay, I will come some other property. By this matrix is symmetric. Sigma xy becomes sigma yx, sigma xz becomes sigma zx, right? Sigma zy becomes sigma yz. This is by default the symmetric property of the matrix. Some other property I will come into the subsequent slide. Okay, so the net, the force from the Newton's second law, here we come to know that this term represents the net unbalanced force acting along the fluid. Okay, so the net unbalanced force that is acting on the fluid is the summation of the body force and the summation of the surface force. Now here the question is that what is body force and what is surface force? Body force is a force which acts on the center of gravity or the mass center of the control volume. Okay, and it doesn't require any contact. Means you put a ball somewhere in the space, because of the gravity action it will fall down. You put in the charge particle in the electric field, it will start moving because of the action of the electric field. In that case, what is happening? Because of the body force, they are acting exactly at the center of gravity or the center of mass of the control volume, and this results in the movement of the particle, right? So, or forcing on the particle. But what they do, they don't need any contact, right? Rather than they need any external field for application of the body force. On the other hand, surface force is a force which need extensive contact on the control volume through the control surface for its application. So now we come to know that any traction vector in as I told, any forcing over here you are applying to the surface, they are come into surface force category. So normally once you provide some force over here, they are known as traction vector. Any force vector you are providing on a body, that is known as traction vector. Again, as the body surface is again a vector quantity, the interaction between the traction vector and the surface normal, the results a stress tensor, that is called Cauchy stress tensor, right? So here, then how to get the stress tensor from the this is tau is represented in my stress vector, right? Stress vector and any surface. This is a traction vector. Stress vector I never that. This is a traction vector normally. Yes, there is some misconfusion between the side. So once you take the dot product of the surface normal with your Cauchy stress tensor, you will get a vector. The dot product of a vector with a matrix, this will give you a vector over here, right? That is the traction move. Suppose you have surface normal direction in the x direction. Okay, you put surface normal direction 1, 0, 0. Once you take the dot product of this with the Cauchy stress tensor, you will get sigma xx, sigma xy, sigma xz. That is the net force acting on the surface that you have a normal in x direction. Right? It is clear. Okay, for any arbitrary control volume. Okay, now here what we did, here we did a mapping with a surface force. We get it from in terms of what, the dot product between what, the dot product between the surface normal vector times the Cauchy stress tensor, right? So now for a Cauchy's theorem, okay, this is what is telling the net force acting along the thing, just like we derive over here for one surface. Similarly, we have a x surface, y surface, z surface. To find the net force acting on the body control volume, what you need to do, individually need to carry out the dot product operation between each surface normal direction. That's what the Cauchy did for j equals to, sorry, this is in the index notation.